The moment Dr. Sarah Chen stepped into James Wilson's modest apartment, she knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary house call. The 40-year-old single father lay shivering under a thin blanket, his face pale and drawn, while his 10-year-old daughter Emma clutched his hand with tears streaming down her face. "Please help my daddy," the little girl whispered. "He's all I have left." What happened next would change all their lives forever, in ways none of them could have imagined. If you're touched by this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of human connection and resilience. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us of our shared humanity. James Wilson had always been the picture of health and strength, at least that's what he wanted his daughter to believe. Behind closed doors, he'd been ignoring the persistent cough, the night sweats, and the crushing fatigue for months. As the sole provider for Emma since his wife's death 3 years ago, he couldn't afford to be sick. He couldn't afford the time off work, the medical bills, or the worry it would cause his daughter. But that morning, when he couldn't even summon the strength to get out of bed, Emma had taken matters into her own hands. She'd found their neighbor's phone number on the refrigerator and called for help. Mrs. Patel from next door had immediately recognized the severity of the situation and contacted her niece, Dr. Sarah Chen, who ran a small family practice across town. "How long have you been feeling this way?" Dr. Chen asked, her voice gentle but firm as she took James's temperature. The thermometer read 103.8 degrees Fahrenheit. "It's just a bad cold," James insisted weakly. "I'll be fine in a day or two." Emma stood in the doorway, her small frame seeming even tinier as she hugged herself tightly. "He's been coughing for weeks," she said. "And he hardly eats anymore." Dr. Chen's eyes met Emma's, and something passed between them, an understanding, a silent promise. "I think we need to get you to a hospital, Mr. Wilson," she said, turning back to James. "Your symptoms suggest something more serious than a cold." "I can't," James protested, attempting to sit up and immediately falling back against his pillows. "Emma has school, and I have work, and none of that matters if you're not alive to take care of it," Dr. Chen interrupted firmly. "Emma needs her father healthy." The hospital tests confirmed Dr. Chen's suspicions: severe pneumonia, complicated by extreme exhaustion and malnutrition. James had been running himself into the ground, working 2 jobs while skipping meals to ensure Emma always had enough. His immune system had finally collapsed under the strain. During James's week-long hospital stay, Dr. Chen found herself stopping by even when she wasn't on duty. Something about the quiet dignity of this man fighting so hard for his daughter touched her deeply. And Emma, bright, brave Emma, had no one else to turn to. Mrs. Patel could only help so much with her own family responsibilities. "You know," Dr. Chen said one evening as she sat beside James's hospital bed while Emma dozed in a chair nearby, "there are resources available. Programs that could help you both." James's eyes, clearer now as the antibiotics took effect, filled with a mixture of pride and shame. "I've always managed on my own." "And look where that's gotten you," she replied, not unkindly. "Accepting help doesn't make you weak, James. It makes you smart." As James recovered, Dr. Chen became a regular presence in their lives. She helped connect them with assistance programs for Emma's after-school care and nutritional support. She found a patient advocate who could help navigate the maze of hospital bills and insurance claims. And somewhere along the way, her professional concern evolved into something deeper. The first time she invited them to dinner at her apartment, 2 months after James's hospitalization, Emma had looked around wide-eyed at the bookshelves lining the walls. "You have more books than the library," she exclaimed. "Do you like to read?" Sarah asked, smiling as the girl nodded enthusiastically. "Dad and I read together every night," Emma said proudly. Even when he was super tired, he never skipped. James, standing in the doorway, looked embarrassed. "It wasn't much, but it was our thing." "It was everything," Sarah said softly, understanding in that moment just how much love existed in this small family of 2. The seasons changed, and so did their lives. James gradually regained his strength and, with Sarah's encouragement, enrolled in night classes to earn a certification that would allow him to find better-paying work with more reasonable hours. Emma blossomed under the attention of two adults who adored her, her grades improving as the constant worry about her father eased. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. James struggled with accepting help, with feeling indebted. "I don't want to be your charity case," he told Sarah during one particularly difficult evening, after she'd brought over groceries when his car broke down. "Is that what you think this is?" she asked, hurt evident in her voice. "Charity? What else would you call it? You're successful, educated, with a career that helps people. I'm a high school dropout working warehouse shifts and taking basic computer classes." Sarah set down the bag of groceries and faced him squarely. "I call it caring, James. I call it seeing a man who loves his daughter so fiercely he nearly killed himself trying to provide for her. I call it admiring your determination and your heart. And yes, I call it wanting to be part of your lives, if you'll let me." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken feelings, with fears and hopes neither had dared voice before. It was Emma who broke the tension, walking into the kitchen and looking between them with the perceptiveness children sometimes possess. "Are you two fighting?" she asked worriedly. "No, sweetheart," Sarah answered, her eyes still on James. "We're just figuring some things out." "Good," Emma said decisively. "Because I was thinking maybe we could all go to the Science Museum this weekend. They have a new exhibit about the human body, and Sarah could explain all the complicated parts to us." James looked at his daughter, then at the woman who had become so essential to both their lives. "I think that sounds perfect," he said quietly. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, James and Sarah sat on his small balcony, mugs of tea warming their hands against the autumn chill. "I've never been good at accepting help," James admitted. "After Lisa died, I was determined to prove I could raise Emma on my own, that she wouldn't suffer because her mother was gone." "She hasn't suffered because you're an amazing father," Sarah said. "But that doesn't mean you have to do it alone." "I'm starting to understand that," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "When I was in that hospital bed, all I could think about was what would happen to Emma if I didn't make it. Who would love her the way I do? Who would know that she sleeps with her stuffed penguin even though she pretends she's too old for it now? Who would remember that she's allergic to strawberries but loves strawberry-scented things?" Sarah reached across the space between them and took his hand. "I know those things now," she said simply. Their first kiss happened naturally, under the glow of the string lights Emma had insisted on hanging around the balcony to make it magical. And magical it was, this unexpected connection that had grown from illness and worry into something life-affirming and strong. 6 months later, when Sarah's lease was up, she moved into their apartment. Emma helped her arrange her books on new shelves James had built specifically for them. "Now our home has a library too," the girl said happily. A year after that first house call, they became a family in the eyes of the law as well as in their hearts. The wedding was small, just close friends and family in the community garden where they'd spent so many weekend afternoons. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, beaming with pride as she walked down the makeshift aisle. During the reception, James pulled Sarah aside for a moment of quiet amid the celebration. "Do you remember what you said to me that day in the hospital?" he asked. "About accepting help making me smart, not weak?" Sarah nodded, her eyes soft with memory. "It was the best advice anyone ever gave me," he continued. "Because accepting your help, letting you into our lives, it's the smartest thing I've ever done." "We helped each other," Sarah replied, thinking of how empty her life had felt before them, how focused on work and achievement without the warmth of real connection. "That's what families do." As they rejoined the celebration, Sarah caught sight of Emma showing Mrs. Patel how to use the instant camera they'd provided for guests to take photos. The older woman was laughing as Emma demonstrated with exaggerated gestures, the joy between them transcending age and cultural differences. This was the true healing that had taken place, Sarah realized. Not just James's physical recovery, but the healing of 3 hearts that had each been broken in different ways. Her own parents' expectations had driven her relentlessly toward professional success while leaving little room for personal fulfillment. James had been drowning in grief and responsibility. And Emma had been carrying the weight of worry far too heavy for her young shoulders. Together, they had found balance. Together, they had become whole. Years passed, bringing new challenges and joys. Emma grew into a thoughtful teenager with her father's determination and Sarah's analytical mind. James completed his education and started his own small business installing and maintaining computer systems for local companies. Sarah continued her medical practice but scaled back her hours to ensure family dinners remained sacred time. On the 5th anniversary of that fateful house call, they returned to the hospital, not as patient and doctor, but as a family bringing homemade cookies to the nursing staff who had cared for James. It had become their tradition, this annual reminder of how close they had come to losing everything and how much they had gained instead. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if I hadn't gotten sick?" James asked Sarah that night as they walked home, Emma a few steps ahead texting a friend. "Sometimes," Sarah admitted. "But then I remember something my grandmother used to say, the universe has many paths to bring together souls that belong with each other. If it hadn't been pneumonia, maybe it would have been a broken arm or a chance meeting at a coffee shop." James squeezed her hand. "I prefer to think we would have found each other somehow. That some things are just meant to be." Ahead of them, Emma turned around, walking backward to face them. "Are you two being sappy again?" she asked, rolling her eyes but smiling. "Absolutely," James confirmed. "It's our parental duty to embarrass you with our mushiness." Emma groaned dramatically but fell back to walk between them, linking her arms through theirs in a gesture that was becoming rarer as she grew more independent. For a moment, they were connected physically as they were always connected in their hearts, 3 people who had found each other against the odds. Life would continue to bring its challenges. There would be arguments and misunderstandings, teenage rebellion and midlife questions. But beneath it all ran the current of what they had built together, a family forged not from obligation or blood, but from choice and love and the courage to reach out when reaching out was hardest. And it had all begun with a single father too stubborn to admit he needed help, a daughter brave enough to ask for it anyway, and a doctor who saw beyond the illness to the hearts that needed healing. Sometimes the most profound medicine isn't found in prescriptions or procedures. Sometimes it's found in the simple act of caring, of showing up, of refusing to let someone face their struggles alone. In a world that often feels disconnected and cold, this is the message worth remembering, that healing happens in community, that vulnerability can be strength, and that love, in its many forms, remains the most powerful medicine of all. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of hope, connection, and the beautiful complexity of human relationships. Remember that sometimes our greatest challenges lead us to our greatest blessings, and that none of us has to face life's journey alone.